Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's here. NFL football is here. It is week 1. So we are doing Take Week here on Wake and Take. We're going to be bringing you all the hits. Today, we're doing busts and values. Tomorrow, we'll get some of my finalized flag plants. Wednesday, we'll finalize my rankings. Thursday, we'll, of course, look at the week since we've got some Thursday night football stuff like that. And then Friday, we're going to get the final hot takes for the season. So it's going to be a great week coming up here on Wake and Take. Great week for the NFL and everything. So week 1 football is here. Take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh, welcome in, everyone. Glad to see you all in the chat, and sorry for the delays. Right when I was about to go live, my computer decided it needed to restart. I didn't press it. It just went blue, said, your computer needs to restart, and even had like a little frowny face. It had a little frowny face on the graphic that it gave me, and then it restarted. But we're here. We're here now. We're ready to talk some football. Good morning to you, Donald, Bach, Proper 19. All of you guys in the chat, thanks for tuning in. It's a wonderful holiday here on Labor Day. Hope you guys are all sitting at home getting cozy watching this show. Before we get into today's busts and values, I did want to cover a couple news stories. And of course, that's just going to be I guess not even a couple news stories. We'll just go ahead and cover it. Ricky Pearsall, unfortunately, was involved in a shooting over the weekend, a robbery attempt, actually. Somebody tried to rob, I believe it was a Rolex watch off of him, ended up shooting him in the chest. Ricky, the dog that he is, just was able to, after being shot, apprehend the guy. I believe he even was able to shoot him with his own gun, if I'm not mistaken, and get him arrested. Then he walked under his own power to the ambulance and was released from the hospital within 24 hours. So Ricky Pearsall, total dog energy. Wish him the best in his recovery, and happy to hear that it isn't that serious of a bullet wound. Supposedly it went through his chest completely, a completely clean shot, and that's why he was able to be released so quickly. So we'll find out what that means for returning to the football field. I'm sure that it's still going to take a little bit of time, given it was right in the chest. I'm sure it would suck to get hit in the chest after being shot in the chest. But I'm no doctor. I'm sure that there will be some more updates on this. We have, of course, now 2 instances recently of players being shot and returning to the football field fairly quickly. Brian Robinson a couple years ago, Tank Dell this season as well, this offseason, he was shot, was able to recover really quickly for practice and stuff like that, and his was in the leg. So, obviously a serious injury, something that we don't want to see in our society that we keep seeing, and, it's becoming an issue every single day. But the very least, it seems that this was best case scenario, as Pat Phoenix even says in the chat that the robber ended up being released too after being shot. So it seems that the worst case scenario was totally avoided, which is the good news in this situation. So wish the best to Ricky Pearsall in his recovery. And I don't really want to bring fantasy into it, but I guess this is a fantasy show. I guess you kind of have to be a little bit higher on Jacob Cowing. We were already pretty high on him. And he's just, going to have even more opportunity in the actual season to see the field, as Ricky Pearsall was actually trending towards returning week 1. I would be surprised if he plays week 1. Again, I have no idea how this works. Given the fact he was released, maybe he is good. But there's a hole in his body. You would assume that takes some time to heal. But again, I have no idea. No doctors or anyone from the team has revealed a timeline or anything like that. All we know is that he's alive, recovered, out of the hospital. And that's really all we can ask for at this time. So, just a little bit of a clap for Ricky Pearsall for not only recovering quickly, but apprehending the suspect and making a situation that could have been so much worse not that bad at all, really. For him and the shooter to be able to survive that's pretty nice. And hopefully he's not walking around with a Rolex and all his ice from now on. Hopefully, kind of keep safe and all that stuff, and he can be out there on the field quickly. There will be no more Ricky Pearsall disrespect on this show. That's some dog energy again. That's some tough stuff to be able to do that, not only just to survive the shooting, but to then have the mind to just go ahead and apprehend the guy and get him and keep him from getting to anyone else. Just, again, good stuff from Ricky. Wish him the best. Hopefully he's out on the field soon. We'll find out. We will find out. Again, there's no really information about that at all. So we will go ahead and now move on to the topic of today's show. Busts and values. Last year we did this, and it went really well, actually. Last year We predicted the biggest bust by position. And in case you were wondering, these were last year's prediction. Deshaun Watson at quarterback, Darren Waller at tight end, Garrett Wilson at wide receiver, and Tony Pollard at running back. All 4 of those were massive disappointments. And I'm honestly pretty proud of myself for predicting all 4 of those busts. In fact, honestly, those might factually be the biggest busts at the position from last season across the board. Like Deshaun Watson was terrible at quarterback. Darren Waller, I don't even remember if he ended up seeing the field at all. He was awful. Tony Pollard, completely inefficient and did nothing. And Garrett Wilson, that one was easy, right? I mean, like, obviously Aaron Rodgers was supposed to be there, but and then he ended up getting hurt. Garrett Wilson was the biggest bust last year as well at the wide receiver position. This year, we're not just doing busts. This year, I decided I might as well also throw a value in there. If we're going to have some negativity, we also might as well have some positivity. And I do want to say that this is the toughest episode to do. It is tough to predict a player to bust. And as you can see from the thumbnail, I'm not shying away from studs. And in fact, that's how you find a bust, right? You've got to look at the top, to find these players that are not going to perform at their ADP. This year, I got a little bold. This year, these are some top players that I'm deciding I just don't really that I'm going to coin as a bust. We'll talk about it as we get into it. It's a little loose, I think, the term for a couple of these players. But, I mean, this year's ADPs are pretty interesting. Last year, it was pretty easy. Like Deshaun Watson, Darren Waller, Tony Pollard, Garrett Wilson, I felt like all of those guys got steamed up for very little reason and was easy to fade. This year, I mean, like, we're getting pretty smart as a fantasy community. I mean, like, I'm looking at this first round, everything feels about right. And the second round, everything feels about right for the most part. So I really just had to look at the top. So before we get into it, before we get into the busts and the values, why don't we hear a little bit about Fast Draft? But before we hear about Fast Draft, I've got a trivia question for you. Which college, to celebrate college football returning this weekend, which college has the record for the most points scored in the game? The answer coming up after this.
Drafting is the best part of fantasy football.
Right. Make sure you guys get Fast Draft. There's only a few days left to join those tournaments, and it is incredible. It's not incredible just because it's fast. It's incredible because it's easy and fun. It's incredible. It's just awesome. Go get Fast Draft today. Now, for trivia, the question was, what college has the record for the most points scored in a game? That would be Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech scored 222 points against Cumberland in 1916. Fun fact about that, Cumberland actually disbanded their football team before this, and Georgia Tech threatened to sue them if they didn't play. So they just threw some people out there, and that's why Georgia Tech was able to score 222 points. Just absolutely insane. Could you imagine how many fantasy points that would be if it were the NFL? So that's probably going to be the last college football trivia question we ever have on here. But hey, Georgia Tech, 222 points in a game. All right, let's go ahead and get into it, guys. The biggest busts and values at each position. We'll start at quarterback. Josh Allen is going to be a bust. I hate saying it. I really do. And this one is mostly vibes. This is a vibes pick because I do believe that Josh Allen will still be a top scoring quarterback. And in fact, I have a lot of exposure to Josh Allen this season. I've been drafting him a lot over the summer in best ball leagues in particular because, he's a decent value in the 4th round. He really is. I mean, like, if you're someone like me who likes to get a cornerstone at each position when they're drafting, have someone that could be RB1, have someone that could be quarterback 1, wide receiver 1, tight end 1, then Josh Allen kind of stares you in the face and you'll want to press that button. And it's fair. Like I said, I've been doing it a few times. But with that being said, I do think that his reign as the consistent overall number 1 scorer in fantasy, number 1 quarterback by a decent, in fact, even a wide margin sometimes, I think that's finally coming to an end this year. I think that it's going to be a lot closer at the top of the quarterback position than people are giving credit for. And I think that those teams that maybe waited to draft quarterback are going to be a lot happier than those that reached for Josh Allen, just because there's no wide receiver 1 in Buffalo anymore. Losing Stephon Diggs is going to hurt a lot. It really is. And I know that they have Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, they drafted Keon Coleman, yada, 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 whatever. They're not Stephon Diggs. They're just not. And I think that they'll be fine enough as a group to be able to kind of make up for it. But I just don't think that Josh Allen is going to be able to be Superman game in, game out like he has in the past. I just don't see it happening. I think that when we look at Josh Allen this season, we need to look at him more as like a top 10 quarterback as opposed to like a top 3. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're taking him clearly as the consensus quarterback 1, you would like him to pretty easily finish as the quarterback 1. But when you're looking at like Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud now, like those quarterbacks have just as much of an argument to finish as the top scorer this year as Josh Allen. And yet they're going a couple rounds later. They're much cheaper to acquire. And in fact, I feel like they have an easier argument for that. Josh Allen losing his number 1 target, right? Offensive line not getting that much better. In fact, I think getting worse. And then, they're investing in the run game, right? With Ray Davis coming in, that's someone who can actually take away some of these goal line carries from Josh Allen. Things are just not necessarily pointing up for Josh Allen this season. If anything, if you really look close enough and squint, you could see where this is just going to be a down year for Josh Allen. And again, when I say a down year for Josh Allen, that's still an incredible season. And that's why I'm still taking him. But when you're talking about a bust, it's Josh Allen. It's Josh Allen at the quarterback position, because he's not going to be the quarterback 1 by a decent margin this year. It's going to be a lot closer. In fact, I don't really think he's going to be the number 1 quarterback this season. It's going to be hard for him to do that without a Stephon Diggs type wide receiver. It's really impossible. It really is. And again, I'm not saying that drafting Josh Allen is going to crush your team, but I think that a lot of people that waited and got like a Jaden Daniels, a Jordan Love, a Kyler Murray, a Trevor Lawrence, a Justin Herbert even, or the quarterback we'll talk about as the best value, I think that those teams are just going to end up as stronger builds. Josh Allen is going to be excellent. That's not what I'm trying to say here, but he's technically going to be a bust at his draft price, right? I mean, when you're taking him in the 3rd, 4th, sometimes even 2nd round, I've seen, you're expecting a massive, massive year, and you're going to get a massive year. It's Josh Allen. But in comparison to the other quarterbacks, I don't think it's going to be massive enough to be worth the price. And just some metrics to throw your way that could kind of help make this argument feel even clearer. The Bills last season, they were 29th in protection rate, and that led to Josh Allen actually having the 7th most pressured throws. Also last year, Josh Allen was top 5 in danger plays and had the 2nd most interceptable passes in the entire league, only behind Sam Howell. Also, last year, while he was number 1 in points per game, he was not number 1 in expected points per game. He was actually 2nd in expected points per game, which shows that there are other quarterbacks out there with similar upside. And while he did lead the NFL in points per game, he was actually only he did that because he was 5th in expected points added. He was very, very efficient. And he was efficient because he had 15 rushing touchdowns that led all quarterbacks and led a bunch of running backs too. I mean, that was like the 3rd most rushing touchdowns last season, or 4th, right behind Jalen Hurts. No, it couldn't be Jalen Hurts. He led the NFL led all quarterbacks in rush touchdowns. 15 rushing touchdowns is a lot from a quarterback. And again, they added Ray Davis, right? Like, who's someone who can take those carries and, make sure that Josh Allen can stay healthy and not have to do those. On top of losing his number 1 target, on top of having not that great of an offensive line, I just think that we need to view Josh Allen as more of a top quarterback instead of the top quarterback. A top quarterback for sure. You're not upset you have Josh Allen. Like, don't get me wrong here, but I think his days as the clear overall number 1 quarterback, number 1 fantasy player, at least for this season, are over, unfortunately. It's not sustainable without a true wide receiver 1. It's just not. There'll be games, right, where he just goes insane, but there will also be some years or games where he doesn't. Like, when you're asked to be Superman, it's going to be very hard to consistently do that. I think, there will be some times where the defense is actually able to game plan against this Bills team. And I know that's hard to say right now, but once the season actually gets there, we will be seeing it. Like against the Jets, for example, they have to do that twice a year. Or the Patriots, they could be interesting. Say what you want about that team. They're at least good in their conference opponents and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't think Josh Allen will be quarterback 1. So technically, he's a bust. Now, who's the best value at the quarterback position? There were a few options that I was deciding between. And ultimately, I decided to go with the quarterback 20 right now, Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford right now, I think, is being insanely disrespected even. I was looking at the ADPs and everything. Matthew Stafford is going after Aaron Rodgers, going after Kirk Cousins, 2 quarterbacks who are about the same age. Kirk Cousins a little bit younger, Aaron Rodgers a little bit older, coming off of Achilles tears. And they're going before Matthew Stafford. In fact, both of those players, Kirk Cousins arguably, but Aaron Rodgers, The Jets are not as good as the Rams. And for the Falcons, they're projected better than the Rams, but I could easily see this Rams offense looking better than the Falcons offense. I mean, this is a year where the Rams have upgraded their offensive line. Cooper Kupp is now going to be fully healthy. Puka Nacua is going into year 2. Jordan Whittington, their new rookie wide receiver, looks pretty special. Blake Corum was drafted to go alongside Kyren Williams. So now we're talking about a more balanced and efficient rushing attack with 2 really solid running backs. This is an upgraded Rams team. In fact, the defense has gotten worse, right? So the offense is going to have to put even more pressure on them. And we're only 2 seasons removed from Matthew Stafford being a top 5 quarterback. Literally finished as the quarterback 5 in 2021. He had almost 5,000 passing yards. He had 41 passing touchdowns. And frankly, that Rams offense was worse than it looks to be this year, right? That was just really Cooper Kupp when he was able to do that. Now he has Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, a bunch of tight ends, Blake Corum, Kyren Williams, maybe Jordan Whittington, a better offensive line. It looks awesome for Matthew Stafford in this Rams offense. It really does. And you can get him at a huge discount. Even last year, right? With a less than 100% Cooper Kupp, rookie, Puka Nacua, worse offensive line, only Kyren Williams. He was still 14th in points per game and finished as the quarterback 15. And again, you can get him as the quarterback 20 right now, with everything looking better than it did last season. And in fact, looking better than it did in 2021 when he was a top 5 quarterback. Get Matthew Stafford, guys. Like, seriously, he is an incredible value right now at quarterback 20. And I think it's disrespectful that he's going after Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. I just think that's ridiculous. I really, really do. So Matthew Stafford, the best value at the quarterback position right now. In fact, I don't even think it's that close. I was looking at Justin Herbert, and I was like, I think that Justin Herbert is a value, but he doesn't have quite the ceiling that Matthew Stafford. Like, again, Matthew Stafford could very easily be a top 5 quarterback, and no one's talking about it. And I see someone here say in Jared Goff, Jared Goff, pretty solid, right? Yeah, another decent value. But, going a few rounds earlier than Matthew Stafford, similar upside projection, right? I mean, like, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua is quite a wide receiver core. Like, that's pretty freaking sweet. So I think that Matthew Stafford is gearing up for a huge season, and not enough people are talking about him. Get him in Dynasty even. Get him in redraft for sure, but he's looking to me to be the best value at the quarterback position right now. And why don't we go ahead and move on to the running back position, as the biggest bust at the running back position is going to be Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams does not deserve the RB7 price tag he carries right now. He just doesn't. I could understand it if Blake Corum wasn't drafted, but Blake Corum was drafted, and for a reason. That reason being that he's very similar to Kyren Williams, and in fact, better than Kyren Williams in a lot of the same spots that Kyren Williams excels at. Kyren Williams is still probably going to have a really, really good season. He was special last year. In only 12 games played, he had over 1,000 rush yards. He had 200 receiving yards, and he scored 15 touchdowns. Again, in only 12 games. He averaged the second most points per game amongst running backs with 21.3. But things have changed. Again, they've brought in Blake Corum, okay, who does, again, a lot of the same things Kyren Williams does, but better. He's more athletic. He's more explosive. He's got a little bit better of a BMI. I mean, like, Blake Corum is just a better Kyren Williams. And I'm not trying to argue that Blake Corum will take over for Kyren Williams. What I'm trying to argue here is that Kyren Williams isn't going to get bell cow usage anymore. I really do think that the Rams will be looking at a committee here, and it'll of course change as the season goes on. Like, Kyren Williams will probably be a bell cow weeks 1 through 3, and then Blake Corum will just steadily, you'll see his snap share increase and increase and increase and increase until they're splitting the damn thing, right? Like a 60-40, a 50-50, even 55-45. I'm not sure, but Blake Corum is too good of a running back to keep off the field, especially for a running back like Kyren Williams, who just isn't as athletic as Blake Corum is. He's just not. Kyren Williams, unfortunately, has demonstrated that he can't handle a true workload. He got injured a lot last year. Again, only played in 12 games. The year before that, only played in 9. He has injury concerns as well. So at RB7, I'm staying away. I either want a running back a little bit earlier, like Saquon and above, or I'm just waiting and going 0 RB and not drafting a running back in this range. But Kyren Williams is not worth it at his price tag, unfortunately. I know that I'm not the only person saying this. I know that this isn't a bold take, but at RB7, Kyren Williams is gearing up to be a bust, unfortunately. I do think, I think I'm a little bit more bullish on Kyren Williams than a lot of people. I still think he'll probably be like a RB 15, 16 type of running back, but I don't think he'll be top 10 anymore. And he's damn sure not going to be a bell cow by the end of the year. He's going to lose a lot of snaps to Blake Corum. He just will. That's just how these things work. We've seen it from the Rams before, where you think one guy's the starter and then they're not. From Cam Akers to Darrell Henderson to Kyren Williams, it's just not worth it at RB7. It's just not. He doesn't have the true skill set to be worth it at that price with as good of a running back that's behind him in Blake Corum. I know we haven't seen it yet. I know a lot of you guys aren't Michigan fans like I am, but Blake Corum is excellent. He's a very good running back, and it's going to be impossible to keep him off the field for too long. Do I think that Blake Corum is going to take over from Kyren Williams? No, but I do think he's going to get a sizable snap and opportunity share to make Kyren Williams not worth his value. So biggest bust at the RB position is Kyren Williams. The biggest value at the running back position, this is another one that took me a minute to decide on. I was deciding between DeAndre Swift and Brian Robinson, who I ended up going with, and mostly just because Brian Robinson is cheaper than DeAndre Swift. I do want to say while I'm here, I think that DeAndre Swift is an excellent value right now at RB19. I actually think he's going to get a lot more usage than people are expecting right now. And he's going to score more touchdowns too. I mean, they are going to lean on DeAndre Swift. Caleb Williams is going to check it down a lot to him. And DeAndre Swift has the athleticism to take it to the house. But he's the RB19, and you have to draft him a lot earlier than you have to draft Brian Robinson, who actually, they were back-to-back last year. Back-to-back. RB20 for DeAndre Swift, RB21 for Brian Robinson, okay? And Brian Robinson goes 10 running backs later. He has an RB29 ADP right now, and I just think that's ridiculous. Brian Robinson is not only a starter in this league, he's a bell cow, and he's going in the range of handcuff pluses. It's like, do you want Brian Robinson or Nick Chubb? Are you serious? You want Brian Robinson? I really don't get it. Okay, we've seen nothing but positive news from Brian Robinson all offseason, how much Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury like him. We've seen highlight catches from Brian Robinson, catching the pass from Jaden Daniels, and he's getting opportunity. I mean, last year, in only 15 games played, he had 178 rush attempts, he had 700 rush yards, he had almost 400 receiving yards, and 9 touchdowns. He was 22nd in points per game with 13.2, and this is a better Commanders offense now. Jaden Daniels makes it better. The offensive line makes it better. The new coaching staff is better. I mean, Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury, say what you want about them. They both have shown that they can have fantasy successes in the backfield. Cliff Kingsbury, Chase Edmonds, and James Conner, Dan Quinn, Tevin Coleman, and Devontae Freeman. These are true fantasy backfields under their tutelage, and I think that a similar thing is going to happen here. The benefit being that Austin Eckler is kind of dusty. Austin Eckler, of course, is going to limit some receptions for Brian Robinson, but Brian Robinson's still going to be leaned on heavily. I mean, last year, Antonio Gibson was there, another receiving back, and Brian Robinson still had 36 receptions for 367 receiving yards. I think that number could go up. I think Brian Robinson crosses 40 receptions this year. And that's evidenced by Austin Eckler not only being old, but they only invested like $4 million in him. And it was a 2-year contract worth up to $8 million. Only 4 of it was guaranteed. They don't truly trust Austin Eckler, and I'm sure there's going to be games where Austin Eckler gets more passes than we want, but Brian Robinson's still going to be in there in first and second down and sometimes third. Like, he is going to be a bell cow in this offense, and he's going to catch a lot more passes than people are suggesting. Last year, he had 1,000 all-purpose yards. I think this year, Brian Robinson actually gets 1,000 rush yards on top of a few receiving, like 400, 500 receiving yards. He had 36 receptions for 367 receiving yards with Sam Howell last year. I think that number goes up with Jaden Daniels. Okay, this is just a more explosive offense. And again, a rookie quarterback. When you have a rookie quarterback, generally that means that they have to lean on the run game. And so I'm expecting Brian Robinson to look pretty damn sweet this year. On top of, going into a friendly coaching staff, I like Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn and what they've done historically with their running backs. The fact that they barely invested in the position, they only brought in old, dusty Austin Eckler, and the fact that Brian Robinson has shown time and time again that he can score his fantasy points. To get him at RB29, I think it's almost laughable. In fact, it is laughable. Go get Brian Robinson in Dynasty, draft him still in redraft, go trade for him in redraft if your draft has already happened. He's going to well outperform his ADP and be one of the best values at the running back position this year. Now, let's go ahead and move on to the wide receiver position. And you guys probably already know it. I've talked about it a lot on this show. The biggest bust is Tyreek Hill. It's Tyreek Hill, and I hate saying it. I really do. And this is, again, kind of a vibes one similar to Josh Allen, right? Where it's not that I'm saying Tyreek Hill is going to have a bad year, but I just don't think he's worth the price given the risk, okay? Tyreek Hill is now coming off 2 straight seasons with over 1,700 receiving yards and massive, massive usage. And in those 2 seasons, every single year in the league, Jalen Waddle has actually had less and less targets, and a lot of that comes from health. I do think that Jalen Waddle looks a little healthier this year, and I think that Jalen Waddle will actually get a normal target share, get over 120, 130 targets, which will come from Tyreek Hill. On top of that, they added Jonnu Smith, who's fine. They drafted Malik Washington, who's fine. Odell Beckham will come off the pup at some point. They invested heavily in the run game by drafting Jalen Wright and then kind of going right back into Raheem Mostert by extending him. And then, of course, Devon Achane is still there. And Tua Tagovailoa has come out. He came out just a few weeks ago and said that they were trying to force feed Tyreek Hill to get him 2,000 receiving yards. He said that. And that's why he was so heavily used. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think that kind of crashed and burned. You can see it in Tyreek Hill's game logs from the first half of the season towards the second half. He's also 31 or 30.5, right? Like, he's old and it's not priced in. I get that, you can't really expect players to get hurt, but when you're talking about a player that you have to draft in the top 3, the second overall wide receiver at 30.5, when you could get Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans, all of those receivers, his peers, the wide receivers the same age or older or younger even, and some of those way later, I just have to do that. I think that we are mistaken taking Tyreek Hill over Justin Jefferson, over Jamar Chase, over Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, those are true young wide receivers, true alpha wide receivers that should be going ahead of Tyreek Hill at his age. His age and injury history is not priced in like it is for his peers. Devontae Adams, 2 rounds later. Cooper Kupp, 2 rounds later. Mike Evans, 3-4 rounds later. Stephon Diggs, 3 rounds later. I mean, it's ridiculous that you can get older or just other old wide receivers much later. Much later. And that's my case there. I'm not saying that Tyreek Hill's going to have a bad year, but he's damn sure not going to have 1,700 yards again. And he's damn sure not going to finish as a top 2 wide receiver. It's just not going to happen. I know that it's hard to say, but you have to understand that he's 30.5. You have to understand that there's other weapons on this team. And you have to understand that you can get older wide receivers much, much cheaper. If you have Tyreek Hill. Love Stars, I'm not sure what you're laughing at. I'm not saying that Devontae Adams or Stephon Diggs are going to outperform Tyreek Hill. I'm saying that you could trade Tyreek Hill for Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs. And I just think that's the big mistake right now. How can you price in age, injury concern, and everything for these other old wide receivers, but not for Tyreek Hill? I think it's a huge mistake. It really is. It's a massive, massive mistake. You do not want to be caught holding the Tyreek Hill bag. Trade him in Dynasty while you still can. And if you drafted him in redraft, go get Justin Jefferson plus. Go get Amon-Ra St. Brown plus. Go get Jamar Chase plus. Are you kidding me? It's ridiculous the price tag you can get for Tyreek Hill right now. Not saying that he's going to be bad, but I'm saying that he's going to be outperformed by cheaper wide receivers and that you have to price in the risk of drafting a wide receiver at 30.5 like Tyreek Hill, especially with a downgraded offensive line, especially with the heavy usage he's had the last 2 seasons. Eventually, it's going to catch up to him. Eventually, it will. And no, I'm not worried about Chase holding out. I'm not. Moving on to the biggest value, and this one was in the thumbnail, so you already know it, Tank Dell. What are we doing? What are we doing? When ADPs kind of came out this year, like when we first started drafting over the summer, it was Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, kind of back to back to back. Like they were all like wide receiver 25, 26, 27, like right around that range. Now, Tank Dell's wide receiver 29. Stephon Diggs has moved up to wide receiver 21. And Nico Collins has moved all the way up to wide receiver 13. Something's not adding up here, guys. Something's just not. I love Nico Collins. I do. But who's the wide receiver that CJ Stroud has said time and time again that he's his favorite? Tank Dell. Like, we have to listen to that, okay, guys? We just have to. CJ Stroud has said time and time again that Tank Dell is his favorite target. He's said that if he were to choose any wide receiver to pick up a first down, he would choose Tank Dell. His first touchdown of the preseason, his first pass was to Tank Dell. It was a touchdown, and it was a great touchdown. I think that we are too concerned about Tank Dell's size. He looked incredible last year. Before his injury, I understand he got injured, and that's why, this is priced in. Like, oh, Jason, you got injured last year. He's going to get injured again. His injury came on a run block. He's not going to be doing that again, okay? It was a freak injury. He is very good at football. He's CJ Stroud's favorite target, and he's the cheapest on the team. He is a huge value right now at wide receiver 29. My favorite thing is that people saying, oh, there's just not enough room in the Texans offense. Something has to give. Okay, sure, let's do the math. Stephon Diggs last year had 30% target share. Nico Collins last year had a 23% target share. Tank Dell last year had a 22% target share. You add all that up, that is only 75% of the targets to these three. So you're telling me that they can't consolidate this between the three? They totally can. 75%, and all of those targets outperformed their ADP of where they are right now. Nico Collins, off of only 23% target share, was seventh in points per game last year, okay? Tank Dell last year, off of a 22% target share, was averaging 15 points per game, 18th amongst wide receivers, and he's wide receiver 29 right now, and he's CJ Stroud's favorite target. Do you guys realize that all three of these wide receivers could have 1,000 yards? Like, it's not that hard to understand or believe. And then the fact remains, again, that Tank Dell is CJ Stroud's favorite target. In PPR leagues, you have to be drafting this guy. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I fully expect if all three of these wide receivers stay healthy over the year, that Tank Dell will be the highest scoring one. And I don't even think that's a hot take. So the fact that you could get him rounds after Nico, a couple rounds after, a round, right, after Stephon Diggs, I just think it's laughable. You need to be getting Tank Dell right now, not just in redraft, but also in Dynasty. He's cheap to get, and he's going to be utilized all over. They've tried him on special teams. They're going to use him a ton in 2 wide receiver sets probably, but even definitely 3 wide receiver sets. I see someone here, Mr. Grapefruit, says he'll get some rushing looks. I'm sure he will as well. Tank Dell is an explosive playmaker. The Texans know that. CJ Stroud knows that. So look for him to outperform his wide receiver 29. Price tag, easily a massive, massive, massive value Tank Dell is. And give me 1 second as my bird has decided to sing before we move on to the tight ends. I'm gonna get him out of the room real quick. That was quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs. Finally, we've made it to tight end, and we're keeping it going. The biggest bust at the tight end position is going to be Travis Kelce. And again, not saying that Travis Kelce is going to be bad, but I checked this morning, and he is officially the tight end 1 in ADP now, going ahead of Sam Laporta, and I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't like it. I don't want it. It's really easy to see that Travis Kelce is declining. And not because he's becoming a bad football player, but because the Chiefs want to save him. This is a Super Bowl contending team, okay? They don't give a shit about our fantasy football teams. And last year, Travis Kelce lost 4 points per game in terms of the season. In 2022, he averaged 18.6. Last year, he only averaged 14.6. And what have the Chiefs done this year? They've added 2 really good target-earning wide receivers, Xavier Worthy in the first round of the NFL draft, and Marquise Hollywood Brown, who, of course, is going to miss some games, which will help. But then Rashee Rice is also still there. And Isaiah Pacheco is looking like a better pass catcher. The thing that I'm trying to say here is that Travis Kelce's still going to have a very high floor, but he's not going to have the ceiling he used to have. There is no world where the Chiefs need to throw the ball to Travis Kelce 12, 13, 14 times like they have in the past. He's still going to have those 9, 10 target games here and there, but not at the same clip and rate that he used to, right? Like, they just don't have to rely on him in that way, and they would rather keep him fresh throughout the season by just giving him 6, 7 target games and then kind of resting him for the playoffs where they could fully unleash him like they have in the past. He's still going to be a valuable red zone threat. He still is. but he's declined. Last year, 30 less targets, 20 less receptions, 400 less receiving yards, 7 less touchdowns, 4 less points per game. That's called decline, okay? That's just declining, and it's declining rapidly. With the new weapons added, with the fact the Chiefs are a playoff contending team, there is no reason for them to heavily rely on Travis Kelce like they have in the past. Will they still rely on him? Yes. Will he still be a top 10 tight end? Yes. Will he be the number 1 overall tight end? No. In fact, I don't even think he'll be top 3, maybe not even top 5 really when it's all said and done. I think he'll be very decent, right? And I don't mind trading for him in Dynasty if you just want someone to be at your tight end position if you're a competitor. But you have to understand that the Kansas City Chiefs care more about wins than they do fantasy points, and they care about yards. And Travis Kelce, at now 35 years old, the number one concern for him and the Chiefs is to stay healthy for the Super Bowl. Okay, I know that, Rubio says you got to get to the Super Bowl first. I understand that, but you're not going to make it to the Super Bowl if Travis Kelce gets hurt in week 5 because you gave him 70 targets over 4 weeks. Okay, that's not sustainable for a player his age, for a player that's had as many touches as he has throughout his career. It's just not. The Chiefs will give him the ball a ton, but not as much as they have in the past. And so a tight end 1 is ridiculous. I'm sorry. It just is. He wasn't even a top 3 tight end last year. He was outperformed by Evan Ingram. Okay. So it's just not worth it. He's got the floor. I'll admit it. Like, he'll be fine, but his ceiling is incredibly zapped. It's incredibly zapped. He's not going to have those 15 target, 3 touchdown, 100-something yard games again. Maybe early in the season, like just to warm him up or whatever, but they're going to coast him. They're going to coast him. They just will. And so just expect it when you have Travis Kelce, that he's not going to be the Travis Kelce of old, but he'll still be really damn good is what I'm trying to say here, but just not worth the tight end 1 price tag. So anyway, now the biggest value, and you guys already know where I'm going with this. I don't even have to say anything. The biggest value at the tight end position is Kyle Pitts. I mean, come on. What are we doing here? I checked this morning. Kyle Pitts is now going after Evan Ingram. I was surprised to see that. Evan Ingram has been steamed up over the last couple of weeks. I've kind of taken my pause from drafting. I've done so many. But I mean, like, it's wild to me. Kyle Pitts is still falling. And this is what's weird to me. Drake London got, like, steamed up with the Kirk Cousins signing. Like, he went up rounds. Like, you sometimes have to draft Drake London in the first round now. Most of the time the second. But sometimes you've got to do it at, like, the 112. And that's just wild to me because Kyle Pitts has not gained any of the same steam. And stop calling me a homer. Stop. I'm hating on Drake London. I'm hating on him. Drake London is not an alpha. He's not. Drake London is not an alpha. Let me say it again. Kyle Pitts is. Kyle Pitts is. Last year, Drake London, 80th in target separation, 72nd in route win rate, 75th in true catch rate, only 31st in contested catch rate. He's not a target earner. He's not a great route runner, to say the least. He'll be good. Like, Drake London will still probably get 1,000 yards. But when you talk about a matchup nightmare, a true alpha, someone that you can build an offense around, it's Kyle Pitts. Okay? Kyle Pitts, the 6'6", 245-pound tight end that runs a 4.49 40-yard dash. Do you understand what type of athleticism that is? Taller than Drake London, heavier than Drake London, faster than Drake London. That's terrifying for defenders to match up against. And we've seen usage from Kyle Pitts. In fact, Kyle Pitts' best season, over 1,000 yards receiving as a rookie. Something Drake London has never done. Okay? Kyle Pitts is a true stud. And last year, if it wasn't for the poor quarterback play, he would have been incredible. He led all tight ends in air yards, air yard share, average target distance, deep targets, unrealized air yards. I mean, like, it is all there for him, okay? Last year was recovering from an injury. Year before that, got injured. As a rookie, was a top tight end as a rookie with bum Matt Ryan throwing him the ball. Now he gets Kirk Cousins. It's incredible stuff. Kirk Cousins with TJ Hawkinson was a match made in heaven. TJ Hawkinson has been top 5 in points per game the past 2 seasons, over 125 targets, over 900 receiving yards, and at least 5 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons with Kirk Cousins. Okay? Kyle Pitts is gearing up for a massive season. Don't be surprised when he outproduces Drake London. And don't be surprised when Kyle Pitts finishes as the tight end 1 in fantasy. Get him on your teams, guys. Incredible value right now as the tight end 8, going off the board after Evan Ingram, around the range of David Njoku. And he's only 23 years old. He's younger than Dalton Kincaid and Trey McBride. He's young. Kyle Pitts is a stud, guys. I know he's burned you guys in the past, but a lot of it was injuries and quarterback play. Now he's healthy. Now he's got a great quarterback, a better offensive system, and he's gearing up to be a true alpha in this offense. Kyle Pitts' senior season is here. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Do we have any questions in the chat? What has Pitts done? 1,000 yards. He's had a 1,000-yard rookie season. Let's see. McBride, Kincaid, and Pitts is the way? Maybe. I think only Pitts is the way. Pitts is going to be the league winner. I am not too fond of Trey McBride this season. I know a lot of people are hyping him up, but I am in the camp that Marvin Harrison Jr. leads the Cardinals in targets. Call me crazy, but I think the rookie that they drafted as high as they did is going to lead the team in targets, and I just don't think it'll be McBride. I think McBride will still be really, really good, but I'm expecting a huge season from Marvin Harrison Jr., like a Puka Nacua type rookie season, to be completely honest with you. Mr. Grapefruit, I kind of agree here that Diggs might be the rotational player. I agree here. They only brought him in for 1 year. And Stroud has already played with Nico and Dell. Like, I think that those are the two. And then Diggs will come in every once in a while too. But I also think they're going to have 3 wide receiver sets pretty much every play. Like, they're going to be out there in shotgun with all of them lined up running routes consistently. Let's see. Man, you got a Monroe at the 9th pick. Congratulations. Boss Hogs, I don't think that you're going to get inconsistency from these Texans wide receivers. I think all 3 are going to be consistent. Now, you won't have the consistent ceiling, but I still think they'll all get at least 10 points a game, to be completely honest with you. But especially like Tank Dell. I think he's going to be a lot more consistent than people are giving credit for. Let's see. How big of a concern is the O-line downgrade in Miami? Pretty much a big concern, but Tua does also have one of the faster releases in the NFL. So it really just depends. Luckily for them, they have a really good run game to kind of keep defenses honest. And they also have 2 wide receivers, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who are really, really good in short routes and then could just use yak. So I think that the Dolphins will be fine with a bad offensive line because it's a fast offense. Like they get the ball out quick. So I think they'll be fine. I mean, it'll hurt here and there for sure, but I think ultimately they will be okay. Let's see. That, I think, is it. Okay, here we go. Standard scoring, Monty, London, or Pittman at flex. Richardson is my quarterback. I'm assuming this is for week 1. I guess Drake London, right? Drake London. Throw Drake London in that bad boy. But if not, Michael Pittman. Rubio says Mahomes will be the number 1 quarterback. Maybe. That's what, I just don't think it'll be Josh Allen this year. I still think he'll be good, but I just don't think he'll be number 1. Cool. Aaron Rodgers will finish the year higher than Cousins. I would be surprised. Pitts is a good take. He has 2 quarterbacks now that'll give him the ball. Nice. Kirk Cousins has always been great for fantasy, Famous Jay, and you know it. Don't even lie to me. Don't even try to trick me. Don't try to trick me. You know he's been a great quarterback in fantasy. He was the number 1 quarterback before getting injured last year. Like, he was a stud. He's awesome. Yes, it was stupid to draft Garrett Wilson 8th overall. I'm sorry, Jim. Maybe not stupid. That's probably the wrong word, but I think that there's probably better value there. I don't know what this means, communication breakdown, as I have heavily been invested in Andre Iosivas all offseason and have said frequently that I do not believe in Jermaine Burton. Trade Gods episodes, Wake and Take episodes, tons of times me talking about Yoshi being the guy I want in Cincinnati. So I wouldn't say I'm finally coming around. I would say I've been there. I love Iosivas. Yoshi's awesome. He's awesome. Cool. I don't think that Penix will take over from a post-Achilles Kirk unless there's an injury. But I do like the take. Cool. Oh, Scott, this is a fantastic question. I actually took the Atlanta defense as my defense in a defense special teams league. Very last pick of the draft. I'm with you. I mean, tell me about it. They have not only one of the best safeties in the league, Jesse Bates. Grady Jarrett's back. They traded for Matthew Judon. They got Justin Simmons. I mean, the AJ Terrell extended. I mean, like, this is a pretty damn good defense. It really is. So yeah, I like them. And what's fun about the Falcons defense is they're like a boomer bust defense. And I know that sounds weird, but I feel like they're one of these defenses that like always gets like, they either get shredded or they get like 2 pick sixes at a kick return. Like, it is wild. They're like a weird, like, kind of ceiling type defense for sure. They get a lot of those turnovers and stuff like that. They're quick to the ball. And I know that this is obviously a new staff coming in and everything, but I do like the Falcons defense. I think they're very sneaky with how cheap they are. Because I mean, they're in the NFC South. That is all terrible offenses, right? So they have 8 or 6 games where they play against bad teams. And then they also have the easiest schedule in the NFL. The Falcons do, because they were so bad last year. So yes, I love the Falcons defense, and I'm not a big DST team or player. But yeah, I think that's a easy defense to get, and they're so cheap. Yeah, cool. I think that's it, though. So everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. In fact, if you liked this show, buy me a coffee. buymeacoffee.com/jfootballwine. I appreciate anything. Lots of hard work goes into the show. We've got a great season lined up, so make sure you keep tuning in and everything for here. But also, if you like everything that I've brought for you this off season, if you appreciate my help, and you could throw anything, even if it's $1, do it. I very much appreciate it. Got to keep the lights on in this place, so buy me a coffee if you can. Everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. This is another fun episode of Wake and Take. You guys were a great audience as always. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe, and also check out the Wake and Take podcast via the link in the description. Again, have a magnificent Monday, a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, Data Analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.